All right. Good morning, everyone. And happy spring. Today is the first day of spring, so the sun is shining, and you all chose to join us for this awesome webinar. So, thank you. So, welcome to today's webinar, Beyond Hard Hats: How Psychological Safety Enhances Physical Safety in the Workplace by Jessica Warren, who's here with us. I'm Christy Wolf. I'm the director of the Mid Atlantic OTI Education Center. And just some housekeeping items here. First of all, this presentation is being recorded, and we will have that available on our website within the next week, or just give us about a week to get it up there. If you have any questions or comments throughout Jessica's presentation, please add them to the Q&A feature, which can be found on your Zoom dashboard below. And we will either respond immediately if we can in that if we know the answer. Otherwise, we will just keep a running list and hopefully have time at the end of the webinar where Jessica can respond to those questions. So just a little bit about Jessica. She is an environmental health and safety training manager at Pennoni and founder of Jannen Consultant LLC. She's built a career at the intersection of workforce development, education, community leadership with a deep experience preparing students and professionals for success. So Jessica has led the initiatives in higher education, youth development, and environmental consulting, creating programs that open opportunities while wow, I can speak today. It's a good thing I'm not the one doing this webinar. While building pipelines into technical and design professions. Her mentoring philosophy combines leadership development, equity, and mental health awareness, ensuring that both mentors and mentees thrive in psychologically safe environments. She's a passionate advocate for cross-sector collaboration. Jessica draws on her background in STEM, communications, and personal experience to help organizations design impactful programs that last. So, without further ado, I'm going to turn this over to Jessica. Thanks, Jessica.
Thanks, everybody. Let me go ahead and get my screen up. And thank you so much, Christy, for the introduction. And,
Looks good, Jessica.
Awesome. Thank you. Really excited to be here. As Christy mentioned, I'm the Environmental Health and Safety Manager at Pennoni's Mechanicsburg office, and I'm really excited today to be here to share what is, I think, a pretty important topic. I'd like to frame our session both from a safety and a leadership standpoint, and really talk about the connection between how people feel at work and how that impacts whether or not they go home safely. And while much of what I will share today might sound terribly revolutionary to you, I do hope it will be impactful in your work and that you will have at least one or two solid takeaways that you will be able to share or implement with others. What we will cover today are real examples, research, tools, and hopefully an action plan for you. This should be practical, and that, again, you'll leave with a tactic or approach that you can implement as soon as today, if you're an overachiever, or possibly Monday or Tuesday of next week. And in consideration of this idea of psychological safety, really be thinking about the combination and connection between trust and communication and how that can really drive us forward with safer outcomes. We'll be talking about empowering leaders to drive culture change. And all of this will leave us to fewer incidents, faster problem solving, and better employee retention and job satisfaction. So what are our learning outcomes for today? Hopefully, again, a deeper understanding of the concept of psychological safety, a recognition of the link to injuries and injury prevention, both those injuries that can be seen and those that aren't readily visible. And again, applying strategies to grow this aspect of safety culture in the workplace. Psychological safety is a term that was coined quite a while ago, honestly, which was something new that I learned, but it was coined in 1999 by Amy Edmondson. And it is a shared belief among team members that the team is a space for interpersonal risk taking. And so this means that individuals within an environment, within a team, within a workspace, within a home, that those individuals feel comfortable taking risks and making mistakes. So defined simply, people feel safe to speak up without fear of blame or embarrassment. Again, I'll say that one more time. Defined simply, psychological safety is people feeling safe to speak up without fear of blame or embarrassment. In the context of today's discussion, some examples that would be commonly referred to would be things such as asking a question, admitting a mistake, calling for a stop work on a job, or reporting a near miss, accident, or a hazard in the workplace. So why does this really matter in terms of environmental health and safety? As most of us would attest to, most serious incidents have early warning signs. Psychological safety will help those warnings surface sooner. In 2023, National Safety Council reported through a nationwide survey that was offered in both English and Spanish and collected data specifically around the connection between traditional health and safety and safe work practices and the idea of psychological safety. Of the respondents working in person, at least one day a week, those who felt psychologically unsafe on the job were 80% more likely to be injured at work, requiring medical attention and possibly missed days of work. So fostering this concept and this feeling of psychological safety clearly contributes to a safer physical workplace by encouraging proactive reporting of potential hazards and safety issues. In this survey, they also noted that workers who feel their employer discourages reporting were 2.4 times more likely to have experienced a workplace injury. So again, really seeing some solid connection between how people are feeling in their workspace and being able to report and communicate, and how that truly physically impacts their wellness every day at work. For today's slide discussion, I put together a few stats specifically around construction and manufacturing. And what we know is that these industries are inherently higher risk. And again, the risk is not just physical, it is behavioral and emotional. And again, many incidences will occur because people didn't speak up early enough, or in a lot of cases did not feel safe enough to speak up. So the psychological safety will help surface risks sooner and lead to safer workplace environments. As you can see on the slide, I won't read the whole slide to you, but if you combine the construction fatality numbers and the manufacturing injury numbers, this is a really heavy impact in these particular industries to workplace safety, which of course is why y'all are here today, learning about this. But if we can move the needle a little bit, we can really make some significant improvements on construction and manufacturing and other types of workplace injuries. I did want to note the manufacturing injury rate at 3 per 100 workers really struck me as a pretty significant number. If you think about it, if you really break that down, if you work in a small shop and there are 30 employees, that means one of those people will be injured, right? And so if there are things that we can do in these inherently high risk industries to engender a high trust culture and therefore reduce the amount of workplace injury, we absolutely want to do that. And clearly there's a gap, right? There is a gap between the known risks and the reported risks. 80% of workplace injuries are preventable. This is what we know. We know that over 4 million non-fatal injuries are reported annually in the United States. And we know that close to a third of workers don't report unsafe conditions. Most organizations are not lacking awareness around these issues and the awareness around workplace injuries. They're lacking a communication path or a community culture to report that awareness in a timely and appropriate fashion. So what does the data tell us? The data tells us that higher trust teams report more near misses and report more hazards. More reporting doesn't mean more problems. It means better visibility and better prevention. And while the data are clear about the connection between a high trust and high reporting, what we see is that psychological safety and holistic safety cultures often will remain a lower priority for organizations when compared to other emerging safety factors and initiatives. While we see this connection and we know the connection is there, it is not truly as tangible and visible as some of the other priorities that are likely coming up in consideration of expenses of time, energy, and other allocations in organizations. Hopefully we can work to change that. Shared ownership at work. And again, I would, regardless of your role, regardless of if you are a manager, a supervisor, a leader, if you have 15 direct reports or you have no direct reports, regardless of your role, being connected to the workplace and having a sense of shared ownership is incredibly important in driving psychological safety and therefore physical safety at work. As we also all know, safety isn't just the safety manager's job. Every single person is responsible. If you're walking down the hallway and you see something in an office that is unsafe, remedy it, report it, take care of it. If you're on a job site, even if it's not your project or your construction facility or your area of the manufacturing shop floor, if there is an issue, shared ownership is what is really going to be driving us forward. Shared ownership will spread awareness and accountability. An example of that, where we see shared ownership across relationships and really driving processes forward, would be something, for example, connecting the human resources department and the health and safety department. If we are combining HR with health and safety, those two teams connected can really be recognized as a key tenet to address safety in a more complete manner. A research study from McKinsey recently suggested that an overwhelming majority, 89%, so I won't say nearly all, but 89% of those questioned believe that psychological safety in the workplace encourages greater innovation and a stronger community, and indicates that when it is present, it helps workers feel safe in their place of work. So again, 89% of workers questioned believe that psychological safety encourages greater innovation, right? So now we're not only talking about being safe at work, we're talking about being more productive at work, being more innovative at work, and really driving the business forward. There are a number of tangible benefits to shared ownership, an increased accountability, better engagement, faster problem solving, this one I love, and a sense of belonging. These are all cultural strengths that will translate directly into safer operations in the workplace, again, regardless of the type of work that you're doing. In 2018, so a few years ago, Dr. Brian Brim in Gallup survey noted that when people are part of the solution and know that they are a valuable part of the work and the decisions being made, that is to say, when they have a sense of shared ownership, they are much more closer to being fully engaged in the work process. So again, not surprising that people who feel connected to the work, connected to the solution, to people who feel heard and engaged, have a higher sense of belonging, will solve problems faster, and have increased accountability. All of these things will drive shared ownership and drive forward the idea of feeling psychologically safe at work. And as, again, we're all aware, safety isn't just about compliance, right? It's not just about rules for rules' sake. It's about having a workforce in your place of business where the entire community is engaged in the culture of safety. Because policies alone don't create safer workspaces. Behavior and culture is what will. So buy-in from employees who feel connected and have that sense of belonging we just discussed. Buy-in converts compliance into action. And without the engagement, even really strong programs will fail. You could have great policies and procedures. You could have well-written, well-documented training programs. If there's not a sense of engagement, you're not going to see the ROI on those that you should, both tangibly and intangibly. One of the biggest challenges that can often occur in these discussions around safety, compliance, and culture can be getting diverse and disparate teams to sort of consistently buy in and execute on the same strategy. And I do want to say that doesn't necessarily apply only to large businesses. There's certainly, even in small shops and in small organizations and small teams, people who work, who see their work more independently and people who see their work more from a team standpoint. And being able to connect and have people understand the connection of what they're doing in those spaces is really, really important. To that end, some of the common barriers that we see in the idea of getting people sort of connected across disparate teams and buying into this sense of connectedness with each other and the common goal. Siloed goals, right? So it's very often, I'm sure we've all had a project or a workplace where you see siloed goals. Misaligned priorities, again, misaligned at the individual or the team level. That could be bottom up, top down. A lack of trust, which could be, again, based upon relationships with coworkers, relationships with supervisors or direct reports. And then communication gaps. And communication gaps can often be unintended consequences. Recently, in 2025, research showed that the top contributing factors to a lack of psychological safety are, number one, high workload or time pressures at nearly half. So 48% of folks indicated that high workload or time pressure was the number one contributing factor to lack of psychological safety. Close behind that, at 42%, were stressors in other areas of life at 42%. That could include something, for example, as financial issues or issues in the home. And then the third was lack of supporting leadership at 30%. So in consideration of those areas, it would seem that as leaders, we have the ability to directly impact a large group of these contributing factors and how they are impacting psychological safety at work. So I know that we are on a webinar format. today. So it's a little bit different with audience participation than if we were in a conference room together. But I would like to invite you to think about this and either write it down for yourself. If you want, you can pop it into the chat. But what I'd like you to think about is, where do people hesitate to speak up? Knowing where they are hesitant, what settings, what groupings, what dynamics, where are those spaces and places where people hesitate to speak up? If we know where that is occurring, as leaders, we can be more able to help identify options for improving engagement and communication and ultimately ownership. So for example, if, and I can't see the chat to see if y'all are typing anything in, but for example, certainly large meetings, right? Or a large group discussion, you might have folks that are hesitant to speak up. How can we as leaders then think about meetings differently to make sure that everyone in that room understands their role in the meeting, why they're there, and what they can bring forward in that process? We really want to make sure that from a communication standpoint and the connectedness between communication and psychological safety, that we are actively improving engagement, communication, and ownership at work. So here's some pillars of safety culture that I'd like to just review with you today. I'm sure everyone probably has a few more that they'd like to put on the list, but we'll start with these. And these are all levers that we as leaders can intentionally design into culture and operations. I do want to note we can also unintentionally pull these levers. So again, be thoughtful and intentional around your use or lack thereof with these particular pillars of safety culture. So let's start with clear purpose. It's really important to connect safety to purpose. Everyone deserves to go home safely. Having that purpose outlined and clear and stated will really align behavior better than just rules alone. We really want to make sure that every person in the workplace sees the link and connection from a particular task to a particular outcome. If there's a clear purpose, there's likely to be a higher level of engagement and buy-in in the safety culture. The idea of aligning goals with regards to safety culture comes into some of that discussion about taking disparate groups and teams and departments and operations and getting people aligned in the same space. So for example, some things that can be used depending upon your business and your operation and your workplace would be something along the line of a shared scorecard, a visible KPIs, or a transparency in a process. So understanding the connection between work that is happening in production to work that is happening in marketing to work that's happening in shipping and receiving to work that's happening in the office to work that's happening in the field. How are we sharing that information from a goal standpoint to understand that we are really connecting folks not only personally in the work that they're doing, but truly tactically? Sharing the metrics that each team has, sharing it and having it be visible and having everyone understand what those goals are and how one team's goals or one department's goals can impact another. If we don't share that information, what you can find is that safety and the culture of safety will compete with production. And that's the last thing we want. We want them both to be honored and engaged and important parts of the process. Communication norms are another one that is a really interesting arena around safety culture. I think if you were to take a poll, most people would say that there are communication norms in most workspaces. But I would question you, how were those norms created? Were they agreed to? Are they simply expectations and how we've always done things? Are there specific modes of communication that are more important or uh, more appropriate for a given space and time? If you work in a manufacturing facility where you've got 2 to 3 shifts working, not just single shift, but 2 to 3 shifts, how are you communicating? What is the norm? What is the process? What is the expectation? And how are those norms agreed to make sure that information and is transitioning and translating correctly from the day shift to the night shift? We can't just assume that everyone knows what those communication norms are. It's really important along those lines also to look at what you might have as far as some generational communication gaps. We could talk about that for a whole nother day, but clearly understanding what the norms are and how to avoid those gaps or how to account for them, how to be proactive about them, can be really important. And being really consistent in communication and really consistent in the expectation around communication norms, because consistency will build trust. Something that I've always, not always, but something that I have found that has really, I think, helped drive communications norms is regular check-ins with our team, both individually and as a team, and then really having some shared language. So if I say, here's one of my perfect examples, if I say that something is needed at the end of day or close of business, what does that actually mean? Is it 3 p.m.? Is it 5 p.m.? Is it midnight? Is it before I get in the next morning? If we don't define the communication norms, we can't have people understanding that they're all operating in the same space. And when we're talking about building safety culture and building this sense of trust, having a common language is really incredibly important. Clarity builds confidence, and again, being clear in the language that we are using is really everyone's right and responsibility. From an empowerment and trust standpoint, as far as safety culture is concerned, one of the things that as leaders we can do is that we can model vulnerability. We can admit uncertainty. We have all, let me rephrase it, we have all been in a meeting where someone seems to have all the answers or someone seems to believe that they have all the answers. In a space like that, that does not invite collaboration. It does not invite empowerment, and it certainly doesn't invite trust. So as we are working to build trust, what we're also doing is accelerating learning and prevention. So if we can model vulnerability and ask a question, ask for assistance, invite dissent, which is one of my favorites, play devil's advocate. It gives an opportunity for others to speak up, for others to engage, and again, to feel safe in the space that their opinion matters. And when we're talking about people feeling psychologically safe and how that can contribute to a positive and effective safety culture, they need to feel empowered and they need to feel trusted. So be thoughtful in those spaces as a leader, how we can model and open those spaces up. I do want to say it's also, a great way to engender that sense of trust is also to recognize initiative. And I'm not saying you have to email the whole company or put a plaque on the wall or, make someone stand up at a meeting. But if you can recognize when someone is going above and beyond, in whatever way is organic and appropriate in your workplace and in this space with your relationship with that particular person, again, whether they are a supervisor or a direct report or a coworker, these are really specific ways that we can really look to drive empowerment and trust. The last one is feedback culture. This is tough. This is another one where you'll see some generational differences come up as well. But one of the most important things from a safety culture and feedback is just driving a normalization of constructive feedback and recognition. Again, we talked, briefly a moment ago about recognizing initiative. That is essentially also a type of feedback. So if we can provide feedback in a variety of different spaces, the great, the good, the bad, the ugly, whatever it might be, it becomes more impactful. If feedback only happens after failure, that doesn't feel very good. And that's where you start to see that people will be hiding things because they don't feel like they should speak up. When we talked about the definition of psychological safety, we talked about how it allows people to speak and participate without fear of embarrassment or blame. And so feedback in a more positive or even neutral space can really move the culture forward in getting people to come forward when there are issues. So normalizing it and having feedback be something that is customary in a meeting or a one-on-one touch base or a quarterly check-in or a performance, obviously performance review, but really have a sense of feedback culture can really, really probably be incredibly impactful. It is probably of all of these things, I think the one that takes the most practice, because for most of us, feedback, giving and providing feedback can be challenging. I would encourage you to stretch those muscles. This is just your reminder, right, that silence is not golden, and silence is not empty. And so please do not interpret silence in a space as agreement, buy-in, or psychological safety. Some practical tactics that we can think about is, for example, starting meetings with a safety share. So I did work for a company a number of years ago, and every meeting, every phone call, every day on site, we were on a field project, everything always started with a safety share or a safety topic. That's a great way to, again, align goals, get everyone on the same page, and really be acting transparently in the connection that you're fostering between psychological safety and physical safety and drawing those two things together. Along those lines, right, we can thank reporters. So, and I'm not talking about the news reporters, although you could thank them. But when someone reports a near miss, when someone reports an accident, if they've been hurt on the job and now they have to call HR and they have to call their supervisor and they have to file a workman's comp claim, like, it might sound silly, but thank them for doing that. They are doing the right thing, and that is often not the easiest thing to do. So don't discount that step in the process, because for a lot of folks, that probably was an intentional step. And we also know that there are people who are not reporting accidents and certainly not reporting a near miss. And so the more, again, we can make this part of our regular operations of work, the more we can drive that sense of belonging and connectedness and ownership and all of those things that we're really looking for in a safety culture that is connecting physical safety and psychological safety every day. After action reviews, I mean, there's lots of postmortem, there's lots of words for this, the after the fact, checking and rechecking. What could we have done differently? I think it's really important in this process, again, to be clear and to not lay blame in the after action review. So try to keep it objective, not subjective. but also be thoughtful and understand what are the other conditions and things that occurred that allowed this accident to, or this near miss to happen. And anonymous channels is another one as far as a practical tactic that is pretty common. There are a lot of feelings about this, and whether anonymity is the right way to go. That will depend on your culture in your organization. I certainly wouldn't recommend it as the only tactic to getting feedback. But in some cases, as you're in the process of building psychological safety and building a sense of belonging in a team or in an organization, we need to sort of meet people where they are at. And if you're starting in a space where the idea of speaking up is incredibly uncomfortable and essentially never happens, having an anonymous channel might be the first place to start. It could be the first tactic in moving people forward. Regardless of, if you choose these or there are other practical tactics that you're currently using, I would encourage you to, either as a leader or as someone who can seek out that leadership commitment, having that level of commitment will be really important, regardless of sort of where your space is. It will be incredibly important to the team to have that commitment from leadership in looking at these practical tactics going forward. A vital factor underpinning psychological safety is also connected to this self-awareness by leaders of the impact that their actions and their words and their inactions are also having on everyone around them. It is a really foundational importance for leaders to lead by example, as well as leading with their words and their policies and their procedures. It's really just good leader coaching behavior. So again, if you don't consider yourself a leader in the organization, seek out those folks and really work to get them connected, right? Because that's another perfect example of, if you feel psychologically safe at work and you can now take your concerns and your action items and your practical tactics forward to others to help implement, that is also driving forward and driving home the idea of how important it is for you as a particular employee to then be able to drive change and drive connectedness. Personally, I do really believe that being consistent is really important, being accessible, regardless of what that looks like or in your organization. And it will look different for different people and different work styles. Being visible and really being authentic. And again, those are the things that show up in how we are and who we are every day. And really are going to be part of the connection between how we are working with each other and how we're working with our teams. Showing empathy and respect will, I promise, have immense dividends with psychological, physical, and mental health safety. Some daily micro habits that you can use as a leader or as a manager to sort of model this idea of psychological safety. Number one is to pause for questions. No one likes the awkward silence. And at the same time, it's really, really important. So when you say, does anybody have any questions? You got to give them more than 2 seconds. So take a true pause, and give some space, and hopefully you'll get a question or two. This also goes to check for understanding. Checking for understanding can also be important when we're talking about sharing goals and KPIs across teams. If there's, again, not a common language that's been established, or if there are communication norms that are presumed but not agreed to, make sure that don't assume that people are understanding what it is that you're speaking about, whether it's related to a project, whether it's related to a goal or an outcome, whether it's related to a safety stat or a new procedure that's being put into place. Make sure that you're checking for understanding, because again, being clear and showing that level of engagement as a leader will also encourage engagement from staff. One of my favorites, also this one takes some muscles, but modeling, I might be wrong. This one's also good for anyone with children or who has a partner. I might be wrong, and mean it, right? Don't say it just to say it, but I might be wrong. This is what I'm seeing from the data. This is what I'm seeing. I might be wrong. Let's talk about it. And again, be intentional and mean it, and then pause for questions. All of those things go, again, to sort of also the last one, inviting quieter voices. We have all been in the room where 3 or 4 or 1 or 2 people do all the talking, and you know that there are valuable voices in that room. I would encourage you, through these micro habits or other tactics, find ways to check in. Adam Grant, who I'm a big fan of, he reminds us in his work that the 4 most important words a leader can say are, "I need your help." So if you have, for example, a quiet voice in the room, maybe "I need your help" is the way to engage them. Small habits can really compound with consistency, clarity, and commitment. Another stat for you, the Draeger Safety and Health at Work research report, which was completed in 2025, noted that 65% of workers reported that a lack of psychological safety is contributing to safety risks in the workplace. So again, 2/3 of folks, as recent as last year, believe that the lack of psychological safety is making work unsafe. So again, I hope you're seeing some of the connection here, because every effort, regardless of how small, can truly begin to make an impact. Something that you can take with you, and again, see what feels comfortable to you. But these are some prompts that you can either use or share to encourage folks to speak up. Because again, if we are driving psychological safety, one of the goals is to get people to speak up sooner and tell us what is happening. We can, if we know what is happening, we can evaluate, adjust, and keep people safer at work. So something that is, I'm noticing, not, "You seem to be coming in late, what's going on?" Instead, you could say, "I'm noticing that you're coming in. I noticed that you've been coming in a little late to work. I'm noticing that your breaks seem to be a little bit longer." Right. So when you start with start with the I statement. It feels different. It feels different to give, also feels different to receive. Another one is, can we pause and check, right? Which is sort of like asking for help or creating space. Can we pause and check is really different than, "Hey, hold up a minute. What are you doing over there? Why are you doing that?" Right? Those all have a different tone and intonation. Can we pause and check? You're asking for the same thing. It's just coming off a little bit differently, and hopefully in a way that's going to engender buy-in and commitment. The last one is one of my favorites, which is a 2-word check-in. So I would encourage you to look this up if you don't already know, but Brene Brown has a lot of really interesting things around the social science of work, and the language that we use in the workplace and with each other. But she also has a 2-word check-in, and it's a great way for someone in a room, in a meeting, in a small group, in a large group, to do a 2-word check-in, 2 words only. Gives you a lot of quick hit data to get a sense of where people are at. So again, some of these may feel comfortable, some of them may feel uncomfortable, but I would encourage you to think about something that you can either use for yourself and or take back to others in encouraging people to speak up and to use their voice. A lot of times having a script can lower the barrier to getting people to speak up. And so for building your action plan for next week and the coming weeks for spring, today is the spring equinox. So as we, spring into action, think about one or two things that you can start, stop, or continue in the concept of what's been shared today, something that resonated and is something you want to start doing, something that you realized you or someone on your team or someone in your purview, right, is doing that we probably should reevaluate and or stop. And then what are some of the things that feel pretty good and feel genuine as far as the way that you as a leader or as a team member are contributing to a healthy safety culture and a healthy feeling of psychological safety in the workplace. Think small and concise. In the beginning, especially, pick one or two priorities that will allow you to spend that time and energy and move things forward. And then assign some ownership. It can be to yourself. But again, when we're talking about building safer workplaces and building that in part through improved psychological safety at work, this is not a solo adventure. This is not a choose your own adventure. This is a team culture activity. And so modeling the connection that you're going to take some things, but you're also going to be delegating and sharing ownership will also drive forward the importance in a larger way to the import of the work that you're doing and what you're trying to accomplish. And again, my key takeaways for you, I hope today, with regards to psychological safety and truly the importance of it and in allowing everyone to go home safe, to be safe and go home safe every day. Trust will drive safety. And you must build and exemplify every day what that trust looks like. But that trust between team members, within an organization, of the institution, trust will truly drive safety. Using your voice will prevent incidents and accidents. Encouraging folks to have spaces to speak up, again, whatever that looks like in your organization, but we really want people to feel safe to speak up. This is a huge indicator of being able to reduce workplace accidents. Love this one. Ownership beats compliance, right? Ownership is how people are every day and how they feel connected to the work that they're doing and how they feel connected to keeping themselves and their coworkers safe. That is far more important than just complying with a policy. So again, what's the goal? The goal is to have ownership and engagement. And then lastly, small habits will create big change. If there are small pieces that you can implement, one or two consistently, that small habit will truly create big change. And with that, I thank you for your time today. I hope it was helpful. I'll leave this slide up for a little bit with my information and contact information. I'm also on LinkedIn. And if you happen to be local to Central Pennsylvania, I'd be happy to meet up for a cup of coffee. I'll also be speaking at a few other places and would love to make a connection. So thank you again for the time. Really enjoyed it. Thank you.
Thanks, Jessica. That was amazing and such great information. Does anybody have any questions for Jessica? I don't see any in the Q&A, but if you want to put them in the chat or the Q&A, we can ask Jessica any specific questions because we do have some time here.
I'm scrolling back through the chat also.
Yeah, I mean, it was
which
just
is
such
great
great
stuff.
tidbits
Now that I
information.
can look at the chat, great stuff. I really
Yeah.
appreciate it, you guys. It's
Yeah.
really,
No,
yeah.
people were listening and participating, and I think you had some really key points. And a lot of these points, Jessica, people say they're common sense, right? But at the same time, it's like we don't always engage in our common sense when we're dealing with that kind of thing, right?
Yeah.
So
Yeah. Yeah.
we have to remember that we're all just people. We're all just trying to do the
We're all
same
just trying to
thing.
do. We're all just trying to do.
Yeah,
And I think that,
exactly.
that's, again, if we can be really intentional and be really present in the work that we do, again, I think that's some of the best modeling that we can do, and being able to, get people to understand the importance of and the connectedness of the work that we do, the way that we are, the people that we are, the relationships that we have at work, and really all of those things together. It does truly make an impact. And
Yeah.
you'll see the ROI. You'll safety training dollars, and all of those things really pay dividends. And dollars aside, what do we really want? We want everybody to be safe every day. So again,
And
super
somebody's
appreciative.
asking,
Yeah.
yeah, somebody's asking, is there any more coaching versus enforcing type webinars that you would recommend
Oh, that's a
that you've,
great question. Um,
yeah.
I'll take that as a to do. I'm actually going to copy that right out of the chat right now.
Yeah.
Um,
And I just want I know people are jumping off too, so I
right.
just want to let people know too that please go to our website chesapeakesc.org for more information on Jessica with this presentation and what and her handouts that her resources. I also want to let you guys know before we go that Chesapeake has our annual safety awards. That is June 12th. If and we'd love for you to go and apply. There's some of the awards are Most Improved Award of Excellence, the John Lanigan Safety Professional of the Year, and Saving a Life Award. So we would really love it for you to go on there. And Kim has put the link in the chat for that. That's June 12th. So set aside your time. It's a great event, and we'll have another great speaker at that event. We haven't finalized any details, otherwise I would have told you about that. But Jessica, again, I'm just double checking, making sure there's nothing in the Q&A, and I don't see anything on there. Um, are we, Kim, do we have an evaluation to hand out? Because somebody asked about feedback
You know
for the
what? I'm
evaluation.
wondering if Audrey's actually asking that question to Jessica.
Oh,
I
yes,
was thinking the same
probably.
thing.
Oh,
Yeah.
should
Yeah.
feedback be included in elevation in evaluations?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Thanks, Kim.
Yeah, absolutely. Here's what I will say very quickly about, and I did copy and paste the other question about coaching and enforcing because I think it's super important. With regards to evaluations, most folks will only get an annual evaluation if whether you're giving or receiving. Nothing that comes up in that evaluation should be a surprise, right? So including the feedback in an evaluation is really important, but also please don't save feedback for an evaluation. That really actually is contradicting the idea of having feedback be sort of a normal conversation if we are only saving it for formal times. So the more that we can find informal feedback, will actually strengthen it in a formal evaluation because you'll sort of be referring back to it, and it won't be the first time that someone is hearing it. So great
Yeah,
question.
and Jessica, that brings up a great point. And something that we do at Chesapeake is we actually do quarterly check-ins with each of our staff, where it's really not an opportunity for us to give. It's not the supervisor's job. Actually, we're not at that in those meetings to give feedback. It's actually we're wanting feedback on what's working and what's not working on the from that employee, and that really helps to really gives them a freedom to talk and have some
Yep.
open conversations.
I love that. And I know we're pressed for time, but you said that, and it just reminded me of one of my favorite things that I worked for a company a number of years ago, and I had never, ever heard this. In the standard quarterly review, my boss and all of anyone who was a leader or a manager and had direct reports, when you had this meeting, you would ask the person who reports to you, how have I made your job harder? Right? Now, Great question. I always
Yeah.
had an answer in my brain of how I thought I had made their job harder. But talk about a great way to open a conversation and be open to feedback and to create a space for people to speak to you and provide you with information. So that's another great one that boy, and it takes people that takes people aback a little bit. But once you get rolling on that one, it's fabulous. It's really fabulous. So yeah,
Yeah, I love
thank you
that.
so
I
much.
love that. Thank you, everybody, and we hope to see you all soon. And again, look back at our website for Jessa's presentation and there any resources that we might add to it. We appreciate all your time and go enjoy the sunshine. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks,
Thanks,
everybody.
Jessica.